Hey there, Aaron Wills again, bringing you another reaction video. I started this on Saturday, the 7th day of September in 2024 at 1:20 a.m. Along with welcoming you to my channel, allow me to thank you for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe before sharing this video and turning on the post notification bell. Earlier, I don't think I uploaded the video. If I did, then you're not going to want to see this one. Earlier, I tried to find a video about underwriters versus overwriters. As many of you may know, I consider myself a writer because I've written and published one novel, and now I'm working on another novelette, or novella, however it turns out. We also talked about the fact that I'm a pantser. There are plotters and there are pantsers. I'm a pantser. Not a panther, a pantser. And I'm also an underwriter, I'd call myself. And there's underwriters versus overwriters. An underwriter will tend to come in shy of his or her word count when trying to make a novel. Although you shouldn't be looking to make any particular word count, but a novel's awful short unless you come into a particular word count, or it's either too short or too big, or too long if you're not hitting a certain amount of words. Or if you're going too far over a certain amount of words. So we're going to go to youtube.com. I already typed in underwriters versus overwriters, but I couldn't find anything I wanted, so I scrapped it. Here we go, youtube.com, enter. Let's see, search. Underwriters. There's my cursor right here. See? Overwriters versus underwriters. I'm going to type in underwriters this time, but that's what I am. Underwear. Underwriters. That's what I want. Let's go. Bang. Well, what can we find? I think this for underwriters. When your book is too short. Too short? How to become an underwriter. I don't need that. What is this? Who is she? How to become an underwriter? How do I become an overwriter? That's what I want to know. If I show more instead of telling, I could be my problem is I use too much dialogue to try to tell the story. Not a lot of enough prose, but obviously not enough prose, but I use plenty of prose, but mainly I use dialogue to try to fulfill my story. What else do we have? Who's she? Here we go. How to fix underwriting. Editing tips for underwriters. Right? Who's she? We'll go with her. Only because she's cute.
At Fiverr, we offer 3D rendering services. But you probably already know a guy who knows a guy who has a cousin who has a neighbor who can do it. Well, we also know a guy, Sebastian, a freelance expert with tons of reviews like this. We also know
Are your manuscripts typically shorter than the
Yes.
targeted word count for your genre? Have you
Yes.
ever received feedback that maybe your manuscript moves too quickly, or that readers were not able to really immerse themselves in each scene? In general, do you sometimes feel as
Yes.
though your prose falls flat and doesn't come to life to
Yes.
its truest potential? If any of this resonates with you or sounds like something that you are struggling with, then you might be an underwriter. An underwriter is a term used to describe a writer who typically only writes the bare bones of their story. There isn't enough added to the scene for it to feel layered and like it is as true to real life as possible, and a lot of the time scenes don't go much deeper than just the upper level facts of the story that need to happen in the scene. It doesn't really feel like the scenes and characters and places are alive. They just feel like they are placeholders in a story. This can sometimes manifest itself when you have a manuscript that is much shorter than the target word count of your genre. Being an underwriter is completely okay. All writers, I
Why?
think, exist somewhere on the spectrum between underwriters and overwriters,
Yeah.
and everyone is sort of somewhere on that line. If you are an underwriter who wants to flesh out their manuscript and make it longer and make the scenes deeper, there are a lot of really actionable, tangible strategies that you can employ to flesh out your
Actionable,
manuscript and make it
tangible.
feel like a more robust novel
Reasonable,
instead of the skeletal
articulable.
outlines of one. In this video, I'm going to share with you all of my strategies and recommendations for fixing underwriting and making your writing more robust, from introducing more subplots to fleshing out all of your character arcs and plot arcs, and diving into every scene on a sensory level. You will walk away from this video empowered and excited to revisit your manuscript and breathe life into your prose. Before we get started, hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Fraise, and I am an award-winning young adult author who makes videos on this channel sharing actionable writing tips that helps me make my own writing better. I am the author of the They Stay series, including books They Stay, They Whisper, and They Return, which are behind me. On this channel, I review craft resources, interview authors, interview marketing professionals, and share all of the resources that personally helped me elevate my own writing as I was learning how to write. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed to my channel and liked this video. If not, it's totally fine. Now, without further ado, let's get into the content. So, quick disclaimer to share that I am personally an overwriter. I am not an underwriter. I've not personally struggled with this. I overwrite everything. I add way too much into my manuscripts. I reach my target word count for a first draft by like the midpoint of my story. It's out of control. I have to get that under control. I do all of the stuff that I'm sharing in this video before I even start writing, so I think that's part of the reason I'm an overwriter, because I'm naturally an overwriter, and then I go really hard over all of these outlines and arc maps and everything. I also have multiple friends who are underwriters, and the strategies that I share in this video are things that they have suggested themselves.
She must be a plotter, too. I bet she's a plotter.
Or have shared as ways that they combat their underwriting and help beef up their manuscripts. If you are an underwriter who is trying to beef up their story, plot and character arcs are your best friends. You've probably seen a story arc somewhere before. It's the sort of like squiggle thing that looks like it's like a pregnant lady laying on their back from the side. Like it starts out flat and then has a rising action and then has a big climax and then goes down. This is what it looks like. It has a beginning, a rising action leading towards a climax, a climactic point, and then a resolution at the end. The higher the line goes up, the more tense and more tension and conflict there is in the scene or the story, and then the more it goes down, the less. So it's like plotting conflict against time. The main plot points of an arc are your beginning, middle, and end. The 5 plot points I typically think of when I am mapping out my own arcs are my point of entry, which is the point right at the beginning of the arc when you start it, your inciting incident that kind of kicks off the rising action, the midpoint, which is the point kind of right dividing the arc in half, right before the climactic point, the climax, the climactic point, and then the resolution, and push into the next book or chapter or scene or whatever. Oftentimes, one can be an underwriter if they haven't mapped out their story arc to its fullest potential. Maybe they skipped a point of entry, maybe they skipped a midpoint. Maybe they have 1 or 2 rising action scenes but haven't beefed out the rising action, so every single scene stacked on top of each other is getting increasingly tense. Every single element of your story should follow an arc and have its own distinct arc. Your main plot should have its own arc. Every single main character who grows over the course of the story should have its own arc. Every relationship should have an arc. Every subplot you have should have an arc. No plot will be interesting to readers if it just stays stagnant over the course of the book. Things have to change. People have to change. Relationships have to change. Mysteries have to change and be revealed. So when I plot out my own books, this is how I start. This is my very first step. I go to my whiteboard and I draw out these arcs and I fill them out.
I knew she was a plotter. I told you I'd bet on it. She is.
With a bunch of preliminary ideas for the general structure of the story. And I do it for everything. So I write thrillers and mysteries. So my first big major arc is my plot arc. So you have the point of entry when you first meet the characters, the inciting incident where you find the dead body or something scary happens, the rising action as the villain is killing more people or is attacking the main characters more and is getting increasingly dangerous or close to killing them. You have the big midpoint, which changes the stakes in some really big way or changes the story into a very clear kind of part 1 and part 2. The climax, when they...
Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None is the epitome of what she's talking about. It's, Agatha Christie is the, queen of, queen of mystery. And she, of course, and she's the most, sold author in the history of the world. Fictional author. More so than, probably not more so than Shakespeare, but he's a playwright. As far as, just fiction novels go, she's outsold everybody. Stephen King's not close. All the other big novelists are not even close to Agatha Christie's total. I asked my phone how many books she's sold. That's not that important. I'll go on with this video.
They fight the big villain or solve the mystery, and then the resolution after they've solved the mystery and everybody is happy. That's the first arc that I establish. After that, because I write very character-driven thrillers, I write out a character arc for each of my main 4 characters. In my series right now, I have 4 main characters. So each of them gets their own individual arc. I figure out who they are at the beginning of the book, figure out their rough journeys throughout the book, and figure out who either they need to be by the end of the book or who they naturally will become at the end of the book. Usually I have a plan for them over the course of a series if I'm writing a series, so they kind of need to turn into a certain version of themselves by the end of the book. So I have to pick and choose events to put on the arc and shape the arc to create the final version of the character that I want to create. And then every subplot that I have also has their own arc. So every romantic relationship has an arc. They all have a conflict, they have something they're working through over the course of the story. They usually have an inciting incident beginning part where they're like feeling each other out, and then they will have some sort of issue they're working on over the course of the book. They'll have a climax where like the romance comes to a head, or they're like fighting and then they kiss or something, and then there's a resolution where they are a different version of that couple than they are at the beginning. If I have a subplot of a character kind of discovering who they are or getting comfortable in their new situation in life, I start by having them being very anxious and uncomfortable, and then I figure out all the events that have to happen in order to get them to be a version of themselves that's more self-assured. So I will be drawing out these arcs for days and trying to figure out and piece together in my mind, like I'm putting together a puzzle, all the different things that need to happen to get all of these characters to the different places that they need to be, and to get the main thrust of the mystery to where it has to be. Once I have a general idea of how everybody's going to be growing and changing, and all the plots are going to be changing over the course of the book, I go and I put everything in a plot grid, which is the way that I like to outline. I've made a couple of videos on this channel sharing about plot grids, and if you are interested in learning how I like to plot using plot grids, I have linked the videos in the description of this one. This process always results in me having these extremely detailed and fleshed out outlines for things that...
That's something I don't deal with, so... But that's amazing that she's hitting her desired word count for that genre before she's halfway through with the story. I'm the opposite. I write myself into the writing action. I write myself into the falling action of the denouement. I write myself into the end of the story way too fast. One of the problems I know is that I use too much dialogue, which doesn't take up a lot of word count, really. I'll throw beats in there with my dialogue. But, and by I mean, so I would like to, my first novel came in at just, under 55,000 words, which is short. It was a romantic thriller, which is short. When you talk about the desired word count of a romantic thriller, I'm way short. I was probably about 20,000 words short. But I got to the end of the story, it was just time to finish it, so I finished it and published it, or got it published. Oh yeah, I published it. I paid to have it published. And that's what I have to do with this novella or novelette I'm working on now. It was going to be a novel, but I just wrote myself to the end now. Well, I wrote myself to the climax now. I'm only 16,000 words in, and I'm about to write the climax. Well, what would be the climax? It is the climax. There's going to be all kinds of falling action, whatever it's called, after the rising action and then the climax. And there's going to be some denouement, and then it'll be over. I don't think it'll get me to a full novel. Something bad is about to happen to one of my female leads, and then after that happens, there'll be some, I don't know. There'll be some trying to make some touching scenes between her and her daughter. She has a 3-year-old daughter. My mouth is awful tricky, or, there's a lot of mouth places in my mouth gooey. So I think I already have enough words to make it a novelette, or almost. But it won't become a novella. I doubt. I'm about to write the what's it called? Like I said, I guess it's called the climax. And then everything else is what's in denouement, or how you ever pronounce it. I'm an underwriter. Nah, definitely an underwriter. I can't believe she's hitting her word count and halfway through the story. And that amazes me. I wish I could do that. But I'm not. I guess one part is that I'm a pantser. She's a plotter. And maybe she can plot out. And maybe I should learn how to outline my stories. But then you would know what you want to accomplish in this scene. Or this scene. I guess it goes by scenes and not chapters. I don't know. I just like how I'm a pantser. I just write, and then when there's a little tiny cliffhanger, I'll just change, if there's been enough, words in between, I'll just hit the new chapter. My problem with chapters right now is that I can't figure out how I wrote the first several chapters. As far as writing, I had an outline over the letters. It looked pretty cool. And it was like a shadow over the letters. It looked pretty cool. I can't find out how to do that anymore. So that's just I thought I was going into style and word, Maybe I can Google how to do that. I don't know, but I don't know. Well, anyway, let's finish this.
That need to happen over the course of the story before my characters ultimately reach the end.
As you can see, I'm not an under-talker. When it comes to videos, I'm not an under-talker. I'm an over-talker. So maybe I should plot my videos or outline my videos more.
But this is a way that you can prevent underwriting. If you do all of this work up front, it's unlikely that you're going to run out of material to put into your story before you reach the end, because there's going to be just so much to cram in there from all of these subplots and character growth arcs and all of your main plots and all of the different little clues that you have to put in and everything. There's just going to be a lot of material to put into a manuscript. So even if your prose is pretty thin and not really like rich quite yet, which it shouldn't be, it's a first draft, mine definitely isn't, you're still going to have a lot of material to play with. But if you're not a plotter and you prefer to write without really having an outline in the beginning, and you finish your first draft and you have a version of it that is underwritten, this is also a very useful tool for analyzing that draft and figuring out how you're going to approach the second draft. I recommend focusing and analyzing on 3 separate arcs in your story and making sure that those arcs have a clear beginning, middle, and end, conflict, and change. The first arc that you want to flesh out is your general A-plot arc. This is your mystery plot. This is your, we found a dead body in the woods and are looking for the killer. This is the plot that's on the blurb of your book, it's on the back cover, this is the main hook of your book. If you write romance, the A-plot is the romance.
She's a rapper,
fantasy,
too.
Maybe it's a big dragon invasion on a castle somewhere on the hill, and the dragons are threatening the kingdom. I don't write fantasy, if you can tell. If you write sci-fi, maybe that's the intergalactic space battle that kicks off and propels your book forward. Or that's the new alien planet, the people that invade the alien planet and go learn about the new planet that has a problem in it, which is the conflict of the story. Most people have a pretty fleshed out plot A. That's not really where a lot of the underwriting comes in, although you can always flesh things out more. If you're writing mysteries and thrillers, you want to make sure to balance this because you want to have it be fleshed out, but not so fleshed out that it is slow. So you want to make sure that you add enough in to make it feel fast-paced even though it's long. You never want to pad your books, but if you flesh out all of those arcs to their fullest potential and you have all of that material crammed in, it's not going to feel slow because they're going to be racing through all of this material. Because the material is there for a reason, it has purpose. It's not that all the scenes are dragging, it's just that the scenes are quick, but you just have a lot of different scenes that have to happen before you get to your final climactic moment. The second arc that you want to flesh out is your subplot arc. If you feel that you have a very fleshed out A-plot, but you still have a very short manuscript, I doubt that you have added very many subplots. Some people hate subplots. I love subplots. I add so many subplots into my books because I'm balancing these 4 different character arcs, and I want to make sure that each of the characters have their own love interests and things that are going on with them, and so each of them have their own kind of subplot too, so it gets pretty big pretty quickly. Examples of...
That would be tough to do. Have several characters. Well, I've already shipped 2 relationships in this book that I'm working on, and then this novelette I'm working on. I've already shipped 2 relationships. I've been following those 2 relationships throughout the story, and I still can't get them any type of word count.
Of subplot are if you're writing a mystery and the A plot is hunting the killer, the subplot would maybe be the romance between the detective and their partner. Adding 1 or 2 subplots can very quickly increase the length and depth of your story because life is often not simple enough to follow just one simple A plot. It's dynamic, and subplots make sense because if 2 people are spending enough time together, maybe there could be a romantic relationship while they're also hunting for the killer. I know I've said this already, but every subplot has to have an arc, and if your subplots are developed and rich enough, that will very quickly increase both the depth and the length of your manuscript. And the third arc that I would recommend focusing on if you already have a very fleshed out A-plot and subplots are your character growth arcs. Every single main character in your story needs to grow and change from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. No person who has been through a big conflict or traumatic experience, like some people would experience in a lot of books that we read, would be the same person coming out of that experience that they are going in. And understanding the growth that a character goes through is very helpful when writing, because then you can start to track it and figure out what you need to do as a writer to demonstrate that change. And characters who grow are a lot more relatable and likable to readers. Characters that just feel the same and have no development are not very interesting to read about. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I always start my planning process by figuring out who my character is at the end of the last book in my series or at the beginning of my series, and figure out who they are going to become at the end. And then I figure out, like, on that arc and track it, like, what events in each part of the story change them in some way, and like what needs to happen in order to facilitate that transformation, and what are just a couple of flag posts I can put in the manuscript that are big moments of change for the character, like big events that would change something in them or demonstrate a different or bring out a different part of their personality for them to recognize and incorporate into their main personality. Characters never realize they're growing. It's a very
Got some sinuses going and my nose is stopped up or stuffed up, whichever you say, or whichever you're supposed to say.
very subtle thing, and you as the author need to understand it, but the characters can never be like, wow, I'm so different than I was at the beginning. It's a very subtle thing, so you have to be careful not to get too on the nose with it. But readers should be able to say, like, wow, at the end of this book, this character is so different, and in this really new, exciting way compared to the beginning of the book. And if you do all that and you're still underwriting, there may be a couple of things that you can do differently in your prose to also help beef up and elevate your prose. The biggest thing is focusing on the 5 senses. This is not as easy to analyze as the first part of this video, but as a writer, you want to be able to visualize and smell and picture and hear every single part of the setting that your character is in. You want to be able to see your characters like you're watching a movie and hear them like you're listening to them speak in real life. A couple of authors who I've spoken to in the past have these different routines that they do where they will just sit there and close their eyes for a couple of minutes before starting to write. And they go and they like look around the room in their mind. They'll look around the fictional place that they're going to be in. They will have a little conversation with the characters. They will just get themselves oriented before they start writing. But you need to develop a sense for exactly whether or not you can feel the world. Because if you as the author can't feel the world, the readers won't be able to feel the world. And if you are able to make your readers feel the world, they are going to be way more connected to both the world, the characters, and the...
That's something else I don't do. They call it like white room or something. I don't really explain. And they say to over-explain a room, and I don't know too, but I don't explain, the setting too well. Sometimes not at all. I just have them talking. I have very little. I just put them where they are, and then, I don't mind reading a book and then, say the reader says, the author says they went into a cave. Well, I've been in caves before, so I can imagine what they saw in that cave. They probably were pretty cold. They probably saw stalagmites and stalactites. I know which is which. And it was probably a little slimy in places, or slippery in places, I mean. That's how I know caves to be, so I don't need to be told exactly everything about, I need to be told what kind of room they're in as well. Maybe they're in a library. I've been in a library before. There can be shelves filled with books. So I need to know exactly what books they see on the shelves. And I need to know who's in there reading or who's in there writing. I just know that there's going to be some people reading, some people are going to be writing. There's going to be books and books on shelves and shelves. In a library. Everyone's been in a library. They know what it's like. Alright, here we go. Talk to me, Claire.
The conflict of the story. I have to remind myself of the five senses thing pretty often. I tend to really rely on sight because I see everything like a movie in my mind, but I don't taste it or hear it as much, so I am trying to be more conscious about that. But you don't need to do everything all at once, just being mindful of it and thinking about it as you're revising. I wouldn't worry about it when you're writing your first draft. All of this stuff can be done in editing. This is like you can do a 5 senses editing pass. Don't worry about it when you're just figuring out what your story is. You want to make sure you get the bare bones of your story in place before you worry about any of the prose. So that's it for this video on underwriting. I hope that it was helpful. If it was, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to my channel. As I mentioned before, my name is Fraise and I'm an award-winning young adult author who makes videos about writing craft things, sharing writing.
It was very helpful. I might have found another author tuber I'm interested in. I'm interested in watching her videos. I wonder how many videos she has. And now at the start of each one of my videos, I'm going to type her Fraise. Is that what it is? Fraise. It's on the book and it's down in the corner. So that says write with Fraise. I thought it said write witch at first because that's how you spell witch, W-I-T-C-H. I know. I'm a little dyslexic, so I get the C and the H mixed up. I'm not completely dyslexic, but I'm a little bit. I got problems sometimes with that. Anyway, I'm gonna hang up this video now. 2 fingers 8 up, club. See you when I see you. Peace.